Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. I have got Amy Carter, who is the EV Operations Manager at DAF Trucks. Amy, thank you ever so much for joining me. It's lovely to see you.
Hi Liz, absolute pleasure.
And so we've met. We kind of met over a 5-day period back in July, didn't we?
We did.
Because Amy was on the Green Fleet EV Rally that I was one of the drivers for the Women Drive Electric team on. And it was an amazing experience, very, very tiring. But I want to talk about that at some point during the conversation today. But it's brilliant to have you on here.
Thank you.
Right. So let's start off. So as I said, you've been working at DAF Trucks for over 6 years. So you're operations manager now, EV operations manager. You were a technical trainer and an EV specialist at DAF before that, weren't you? But you've worked in automotive for it looked like a long, long time. Tell me about that, will you?
So I started my automotive career in 1988 officially when I went to college in Leicester. And I've been in the automotive industry ever since.
Wow.
But I started, my dad was a mechanic and I grew up around cars, so I could strip and rebuild a carburettor by the age of 7, although my mum was doing it on the dinner table. But yeah, I've been around. But I remember my first memory of pain was my brother turning around with a welding torch that he'd been putting some sills on his Triumph Herald, and it burnt across my calf. It didn't do any damage. It was just like a quick, kind of thing. But like that smell, like when you can smell burning flesh, it was just like a quick. But it was like, and that still sticks in my memory. And I was like 3 at the time, so that's like my earliest memory of being in the motor trade. But yes, ever since. So 14 years as a mechanic with various different companies, cars and truck. Mm-hmm. And then I went into technical training at the age of 29, and I worked with MG Rover until they closed the business. And then on to Mercedes-Benz, Vauxhall, Mazda, a few other manufacturers, but ended up with Audi, and that's where I started my electric journey. So we were developing the A6 and A8 hybrid, and then we moved into e-tron, and I did the technical launch for A3 e-tron and Q7 e-tron back in those days, and I project managed all of that, and then that's when I left Audi not long afterwards, and just after transition actually. I transitioned in 2016 at Volkswagen Group, and then in 2018 I left for DAF Trucks, and here I still am. Wow.
Oh my God. 1987.
Well, I left school in 87, 88, and I went straight to college. As a mechanic, and that's it. Never looked back.
Wow, it sounds like we kind of left school around the same time. But good grief, that is a long time in automotive then. So, tell me about what you do at DAF, and kind of like you just said, you started kind of working with Audi on EVs. Yeah. How did you get into DAF, and what was their kind of move into electric like? Because we're looking, was Volkswagen just the vehicle, just cars then, and then you're sort of moving to trucks? Is that what?
Yeah. So I worked predominantly with Audi as a brand. So I was in that team, and I reached a point where I was 7 years in with Audi, and I'd been a senior technical trainer for all that time. And it just kind of got to a point where there was no new challenges. Everything coming down the line was the same model, but in a different shape. Same powertrain, same batteries. Nothing was really different. Everything was hybrid. There were no electrics on the horizon at that point, and I kind of felt like I wanted to see more. But I knew that electric at that point in time, in sort of 2017, 2018, wasn't really, for those brands at least. Tesla was quite well established at that point, but those brands weren't really going in that direction fully. They hadn't fully committed to full electric. But I knew that the truck industry was somewhere where I used to love working on trucks back when I was an early days mechanic, and just the opportunity came up for DAF. Really, I didn't seek it out. Actually, a friend moved from Volkswagen to DAF, and he said, "Hey, by the way, they're hiring at DAF." And I thought, you know what? Why not? So I had an interview, interesting interview actually, and the lady that interviewed me said, "We've never hired a trans woman before. I'm not really sure what to do." And I said, "Well, just the same as hiring any other woman, really, same." But so we got over that little hurdle, and I got the job. I was asked to explain the intricate workings of an exhaust gas regulation valve, which I did.
Oh my God.
And the guy that was in the interview just went, "Yeah, that'll do for me." And he got up and walked out. And then she said, "I guess you've got the job then."
Oh my God.
So yes, I was into DAF, and at that point, a year later from starting with DAF, they announced that they'd got these new electric models. And when it came to the technical training element of it, no one had any experience. And they looked at me and went, "Well, you're the only one that's got any experience with electric, so I guess you're up." And so I developed, alongside the technical trainers in Eindhoven, where the factory is, I developed some technical training courses for the UK EV technicians, or soon to be EV technicians at least. And we rolled out the two vehicles, the CF and the LF, so the 42-ton electric tractor unit and the 19-ton LF that you saw on the EV Rally. So both of those models have now been discontinued, but we now have new models coming in the early new year to replace them.
Wow. And so, right, so tell me a bit about the models that are coming in then in the new year.
Yeah, so you may have seen in the diesel space that the LF has been discontinued, and we've now replaced it with the XB, which is it's a similar truck, but it's a refresh, if you like. So more efficient engines, more nicer cab, more compliant with DVS standards for London, and also with GSR, general safety regulations for general trucking, basically, where there's a lot more pedestrian mitigation software and hardware on the trucks to make sure that people are safe around the trucks when they're in operation. So the XB comes in a 12, 16 and 19 ton variants, so we've got a lot of flexibility around that. We can go from 141 kilowatt hour batteries all the way up to 282 kilowatt hour batteries on those models. We have a 210 kilowatt hour short pack for very short wheelbase vehicles. So for skip loaders, for example, where they tend to be very short. For London, where we need a very, very tight turning circle, that short battery pack is perfect for that application. And in the bigger models, we have the XD and the XF, which are part of our new generation series, which we launched back in 2023, end of 22-23. And they are industry award-winning trucks already, but they were designed around a common platform. So the idea was, when they built those trucks, that they were never going to be diesel specifically. They were a truck that could accept any powertrain. So it could be that it's hydrogen, it could be battery electric, or it could be diesel. So they're a modular truck. And as such, we have modular batteries on the truck as well. So if you go for the EV versions of the truck, which are the XD or XF, they can either be a 20-ton 4x2 or a 28-ton 6x2 rigid, or a 42-ton tractor unit. So there are three variations in two different cab variations as well. So we can go anything from 210 kilowatt hour batteries all the way up to 525 kilowatt hour batteries. And a 350 kilowatt motor as well, so lots of power. So roughly ballpark of 450 to 500 horsepower in diesel equivalent, if you like. So
wow, I mean, some of that is kind of like, oh my God, I'm kind of overwhelmed with the amount of information. But that sounds amazing. So right, okay, so from what you're saying, it sounds to me like the way that you're saying it, it's not what you're saying. The way you're saying it, you're really excited about electric and electric trucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our USPs is that we've only ever used lithium ferrophosphate batteries. So we've never used an MC or NCA batteries. So we don't have any cobalt in our batteries. We know they have a long lifespan, and they're the safest chemistry on the market. So that's something that I personally feel proud of, because, it is the way forward. At the moment, lithium ferrophosphate, or LFP, is probably the sweet spot in battery technology. Until something better comes along, that's where we are. And I'm glad that DAF have been pioneering in that we've done that from 2018. We've not sort of switched from one chemistry to another. We've gone with the right one from the outset. So yeah, that's something I'm very, very proud and pleased about.
That's brilliant. And when you were talking about the highest kilowatt hour, did you say one has got up to 500 kilowatt hour battery?
525, yes. So basically we have between 2 and 5 packs. Each pack is 105 kilowatt hours. Yeah.
But right, okay, so for people who don't know what that means, what generation or what will that give, and what kind of payload can you take? How many miles can you get to that charge, that level?
Right. So if we take the 42-ton tractor unit as an example, if I have got 525 kilowatt hours on board, that's approximate weight of that's about 2.5 tons. It's a big payload. The batteries are around 700 kilos each. LFP batteries are slightly less energy dense than NMC and NCA. So in order to get the same amount of energy, you do need a slightly bigger battery. But the way we do it is quite clever. Our cells, because they're safe and they don't have the same fire risks, that sometimes, extremely rare, of course. I'm not suggesting that NMC batteries catch fire readily, but there is a small, tiny risk of that, and there's an even smaller risk with LFP. But in order to mitigate the sort of weight penalty and size penalty, what we've done with our batteries, the flat cells are very, very closely packed together, so that even though they are slightly more, a larger kilowatt hour, if you like, they are packed into a smaller space. So it looks as though they don't take up any more space than their NMC or NCA counterparts.
Okay.
It's difficult to explain that bit.
No, I get you. So how many miles would you, if that was fully charged and you had a full payload, how many, and I was driving, not that I've got a license that will let me do that, but how far would I be able to drive?
Sure. So roughly 400 kilometers in the tractor unit, with a 5-pack system, fully loaded, and with the rigid trucks, ballpark of 500 kilometers. So well over 250 miles. And the way we look at it is, range is great to think about, but actually what we need to think about is operational efficiency.
Yeah.
I can only drive as a driver for 4.5 hours before I have to take a break by law.
Yes.
And if you work that out at 56 or 90 kilometers an hour or 56 miles per hour, that's roughly 250 miles. So I don't need to go any further than that. All I need is to make sure that when I've done my 4.5 hours, there are opportunities within that time frame for charge or for top-ups or destination charging.
So you at DAF, you provide a complete solution, don't you? So how does that look like for the companies that you're selling to? Do you put the charging solutions into their depots? But I mean, obviously, if they're going depot to depot, then if they can kind of have it at the depot, then that's fair enough. But actually, if they're on the road a long time and they're going back to their depot, how does it all work?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing, as you know, within our industry anyway. So obviously, if we've got, for example, a distribution specialist, but they're delivering to multiple clients, having a charger at the client's premises causes all sorts of other red tape and issues, but it can be done. It can be, if it's a long-term contract, it can be that they factor that charging solution into the contract, so the cost of the energy is offset by the cost of the distribution network and how they do their business at the end of the day. So it's not impossible. It just has a layer of complexity on top of what you would normally get. They often have back-to-base charging. Back-to-base charging is becoming a very popular solution, and also microgrids. So where a warehouse or a truck distribution center may have a pretty large flat roof, it makes a good place to put a lot of solar energy on that roof. And then with some storage batteries and some chargers, what you end up with is a microgrid. So you're still going to use energy from the grid, but you're going to use a lot less energy because you're storing energy that you've built yourself throughout the day. While the trucks are out working, the storage batteries are building up energy, and overnight the trucks are charged, ready to work in the morning. Or if they're double shifted, you can have other solutions. But yeah, it's never going to be really enough to completely stand alone from the grid, but it certainly means that your energy consumption from the grid is significantly lower than it would be without it.
So, and the chargers that go with that, so you've got if you've got your microgrid and you've got the chargers that go along with the microgrid as well, what power would they be able to, what power are we actually looking at going into those trucks? Because like you said, you've got 500 kilowatt hour battery on there. What's the top power that you can get from a charger?
I mean, there are a lot of variables there, obviously. So PACCAR is the brand that is the company that owns DAF. Basically, it's an American company, and PACCAR Power Solutions is a new branch of the company actually that is involved with the charger sales, and that's packaged alongside DAF Trucks if the customers chooses to do that.
Yes.
They of course can have their own truck, their own charging solutions if that's more appropriate to them. But we do offer it as a service. So what we do as a complete solution is we qualify the customer rather than sell them a truck. So we talk about what their operation is, how they plan to use the truck, how they can get the best efficiency from the truck. But also what we do is we look at the postcodes of, on a typical route and work out how that truck will integrate into that without any changes to the operation. And if we do need to change operation, so for example, destination charging or en route charging is necessary, then we look at what the most attractive and simple solution is for the customer to make that work. At that point, then we'll discuss what kind of size of charger they need. So we go all the way from 7.5 kilowatts for your car park, all the way up to 360 kilowatts for rapid charging of trucks. So it is a complete solution, but in terms of what you can get from a microgrid, it really depends on several factors like how much solar energy has been harvested through the day and how big your storage batteries are and so on and so forth. But we have a dealer in Rotterdam at the moment that's being used as a trial for our PACCAR Power Solutions systems, and we've got two 180 kilowatt chargers there, and they're operating a fleet throughout the day, but they're also actually monetizing that by offering those chargers to other businesses in the area throughout the day. And we're seeing this as quite a sort of a practical solution. And I know in the UK, for example, we have a lot of first bus depots, and they have multiple chargers sitting empty all day while the buses are out working. And we're seeing that this is now a solution that First Bus, for example, and Arriva have been putting forward. So why are we not monetizing this? So other companies like Post Office, for example, have been dropping into a First Bus and charging their vans up en route. And it really works. So I think microgrids will play a big part in the way that the truck infrastructure starts to work, and I think the sharing of these connected chargers will also make a big difference. And one of the things we're doing for 2025 onwards is we have 34 sales dealers within the 300 odd DAF truck dealer network, and each of those will have at some point in the future, we're currently implementing it, but they'll have a 180 kilowatt charger, at least one, some more, depends on the site and the availability. And DAF customers will be able to come through and use that charger as part of their operational daily routes, if you like, if that works for them, of course. And there'll just be a sort of like a back office payment scheme for them to just be able to quite simply and easily charge and then get invoiced later down the line with that. So we're quite proud of what we're putting together for that.
That sounds like a really good idea, because and you see it in other businesses, don't you, where not necessarily just for trucks, where their chargers are kind of just sat.
Yeah.
And actually, if we're looking at kind of utilization, because the chargers themselves, they cost a bit, don't they? They cost a fair bit. So why would you not want to utilize them in other ways and get other people to kind of use the network? I was going to ask you, so if you've got other companies using those slots, is there like a booking system? Can they kind of book in?
So not currently, but that's what we're working towards. So at the moment, it's all very much in the planning stage. It's certainly not live yet, but it's the hope of DAF that, or PACCAR Power Solutions, that we will have this sort of network across the country where truck truck operators can just drop in and arrange a charge. So they will be able to book in, go into their local dealer, grab a quick top-up charge if they want it, and then obviously then a nice simple payment solution in the background afterwards. So yeah, that's the hope at the moment.
That sounds like a really good idea. I was going to ask you, how do you feel currently about the kind of the EHGV network as a whole? I suppose it's very embryonic, isn't it, currently?
It is. Yeah. I mean, the charging network per se in the UK, I think, is fantastic. As an EV driver myself, or fairly new EV driver, I should add, but I've not had any issues whatsoever. I think there's more than enough chargers if you plan carefully.
Yes.
I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for trucks, particularly trucks with trailers, it's difficult because decoupling a
Mm,
trailer, and we saw this on the EV
mm,
rally with the Mercedes, and the Mercedes is an incredible truck. But in order to charge in most of the locations, they were having to decouple the trailer and move the tractor unit onto a charger. And we would have exactly the same issues with a DAF as well, or
yeah.
any other brand. So that's a difficulty. One of the things I did like about the rally was when we stopped at Turbine in Leighton Buzzard,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
facility had been set up specifically to allow trucks and caravans and anything with a trailer to charge easily. And it was a very innovative solution, and I think we need to see more of that across the country. So yeah, so hats off to Turbine for the brilliant work they've done over there, and also they're generating their own power from the turbine that's on site. I mean, it was
Exactly.
so innovative.
And I think that's a megawatt in that turbine, because I
Yeah,
heard the
yeah,
MD. I think that's AW Power. Sorry, AW Energy. I think it is.
yeah.
And I heard that, like I say, the MD. I was at Carfest fairly recently,
Oh wow.
and he was talking with the EV Cafe team, and actually when he was talking about it, it was and I got to speak to him afterwards as well, and one of his directors, and they were just so brilliant, and talking about how the aim is to actually power local houses as well, but
Yeah,
like you said, just to be able to get everybody to, that ability to drive in there,
yeah.
and it was actually, do you know what, the area was beautiful there in Bedfordshire, wasn't it? Yes,
It's lovely, yeah, yeah, and it's just off the A5 as well, which is a major trunking
yeah,
route for trucks anyway. It's kind of sort of splits down between the sort of Northampton all the way down, way past through Bedfordshire. So it's a great location, but we could do with more of them. And
yeah.
obviously, DAF are involved in ZHID. So if anyone doesn't know the acronym, that's the Zero Emission HGV and Infrastructure Demonstration. So the government have put 200 million into a fund to allow operators to drive electric trucks, larger electric trucks, over a 5-year period, so we can gather data from these trucks through telematics,
Mm,
and just prove to the investors that trucks work. Heavy trucks do work in electric application, and we need investors to invest in more charging opportunities, more destination charges, and more motorway service charges as well. So hopefully ZHID will pave the way for that through the three successful, well, it's four successful consortia, but one's hydrogen specific, and the other
mhm.
three are sort of a battery electric and a mix of both.
So actually, that brings me on to another question, actually, about the trucks themselves, and
Yeah,
the numbers of organisations who are kind of moving and recognising that electric trucks work. How is that looking? Is it still tricky? I mean, what you're saying about the charging network, I'm assuming that might put some people off, especially if we're looking at HGVs. But how is it looking? How are you feeling about kind of people's acceptance of electric? Because they're massive vehicles, aren't they?
huge. Yeah, huge. Yeah. The way I look at it is, and I'm going to quote the immortal words of Paul Kirby of the EV Cafe here, because EV van man and commercial expert. Um, we we could just keep doing what we do. We could just say, do you know what? We're going to replace this diesel truck with an electric truck, and we expect it to do exactly the same thing. But that means developing huge batteries to be able to do the same range as a diesel tank.
Mm,
But that's not what we're trying to do. We're in a position now where we can reinvent the transport industry. We don't need to keep doing things the way we were doing. We can do things
mm,
differently. Why do we have drivers sleeping in a cab for 5 days running?
yeah.
It's not safe.
Mm,
Cabs get broken into, trucks get broken
mm,
into in roadside, laybys, etc. We can work differently. We could utilize more electric rail, for example, to move the goods closer to where their destination is, then use last mile delivery in smaller vehicles,
mm,
or electric trucks that can do that journey easily without needing to even think about charging. So it's really just about taking this opportunity of where we are in the industry to say, hang on a minute, why are we just trying to replicate what we did before? We
yeah.
have an opportunity to look at this differently and completely redesign the automotive and logistics industry. and I think that's where we need to go with it, really. But my anxieties aren't really anything. It doesn't keep me awake at night, put it that way. So electric trucks for me work very well. And I think about this as well. Net zero is a massive consideration, of course, and as your lovely husband will attest to, we need to keep below 1.5 degrees, otherwise we're all in serious trouble. But I think about the more practical applications on a day-to-day basis as well. I mean, noise pollution, for example. I live in an inner city. At the weekend, I live in London with my partner, and in the week, I live in a very quiet area of South Oxfordshire. But in London, the noise from traffic is ridiculous. And the more electric vehicles on the road, the quieter that is. And the more residential applications, people who live in built-up urban areas, they can only benefit from that kind of quieter environment, from a stress perspective and everything else. But I also think about air quality as well. I mean, Ella's law has now come into play.
Yes.
You should have the right to live in an inner city and expect good, clean air quality. It's not right that people have a lower life expectancy because they live in the city. That shouldn't be happening, and we need to stop that. So whether we think diesel works or petrol works or whatever, it's irrelevant, because range is one thing, and and how we use these trucks in application is another thing. But ultimately, we all deserve the right to live healthily, and it shouldn't matter whether you live in a cottage in the Cotswolds or in the middle of Brixton. It doesn't matter. We should expect the same.
Totally agree. You know that I'm not going to not agree. I totally agree. And actually, and I think I said this before on the podcast as well, or maybe not. If we remember in the past when, I'm a Yorkie originally, and I always talk about that. People are probably peed off with me listening to me go on from Halifax. But we had a lot of chimneys up north. We had lots of factories and a lot of chimneys. In fact, my mum, bless her, she's no longer with us, bless her. But I remember her coming down here for the first time. I moved down in 1995, and she was going, "Oh, there's not very many chimneys down here, is there?" And well, yeah, that's not a bad thing. But actually, what they kicked out, you could see.
Yeah.
But what cars kick out, unless there's in trucks, unless there's a problem with the car, you can't really see. I can smell it because I've got a really, really strong sense of smell, to my detriment sometimes. But actually, if I can smell it, then other people must be able to smell it. And actually, you've got kids who are walking past schools, and there's cars being left with their engines on and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And actually, if it was visible, it would be different. But what we need to be doing is it's a bit like the warnings that go on cigarette packets. When people kind of fill up. Somebody was saying recently, when people go to petrol stations or pick diesel or petrol up, there should be like a warning label and going, "Did you know that X number of thousands of people die prematurely from air pollution?" Because it's not. I don't think people know as much about this, I had somebody, and it's a very long story, but we got on really, really well. For years, and when I talked about air pollution, and I said about Ella, and she was like, "Well, that's only one little girl," and absolutely, that just
wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's the headline. That's the headline. There are many, many little girls and boys.
But people think this is the thing, isn't it? People, that's how she's not an unintelligent person.
No.
And if that's what people think, we need to up the game on this one.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you say, we are all entitled to breathe clean air.
I read a headline the other day that said that in India, in certain parts of built-up India, like Delhi, for example, some children are being born with lungs that are 20% smaller, purely because of the environment they're being born into. Yeah, that's a scary
sight, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, net zero, the environment is a huge topic, of course, and it's got to be our driving force. But there are secondary factors to driving electric vehicles and other types of zero emission transportation as well that will benefit us, day to day as well as the future. And this has to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely.
Net zero. Yeah.
So if we just move up, let's just talk about the EV rally. And I just want to say a little thing that we talked about before we started recording. So we
Yeah.
call them trucks now, don't we? We don't.
We
I was saying,
do.
when did it stop being a lorry? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of
I don't
like,
know, really. I don't
it's not
know.
a lorry anymore, is it?
Yeah.
So how long have DAF been involved in the EV rally? And just explain a bit about your kind of involvement in it.
Yeah, so we started last year with the 5 Capital Challenge, and we only entered the one truck last year, which was the
Right.
19-ton LF electric. That was a challenge, I'm not going to lie, because we're using predominantly public charging opportunities, and we've got a 19-ton truck with a 5-meter wheelbase, so it's a long truck.
Yeah.
And we were using car chargers, particularly last year, because there was no turbine on the list last year for the
No.
checkpoints. So we were parking in some quite interesting ways so we could access the charge point is just behind the driver's door on the offside of the truck. So so we've got to kind of park at a certain angle to be able to get the relatively short, charging cable to reach the truck's charger. It's a CCS2 charger, so it's the same as any typical car these days.
Right.
Obviously some are CHAdeMO, of course. And it can operate from sort of 50 kilowatts all the way up to 150 is its maximum charge rate on the LF. So we were fine with the charger itself, but positioning the truck to get to the charger, that was a challenge. So in certain cases, we had to park the opposite side of the chargers and then put cones around the truck so we could put the charger the other way. So we were almost on the access road to the chargers, charging the back end of them, if you like.
Yeah.
I think in Washington, up near Tyne Weir, we had to park on the FastNed charger. We were basically blocking the road.
Oh my God.
There was this one where we used, I think it was Instavolt. I think it might have been an Instavolt, but we basically blocked 4 chargers because we had to park the truck horizontally across all the chargers to charge it because we couldn't reach any other way. So yeah, we weren't popular, but we got the job done.
But I was going to say you had no choice, did you? So
No.
hang on. So where's the charge port on the truck then? Is it actually on the cab?
It's always kind of so if you imagine when you get out of the truck and you close the door, if you look at the door handle, which would be on your left, it'd be just down below that and just a little bit further to the left. So it's kind of we call it the mud wing or the front mud flap. So it's kind of just behind the front wheel effectively.
Right.
Yeah,
oh
just
my
behind
goodness.
the cab. Yeah, so it's always on the driver's side on DAF trucks. So if the truck's a left-hand drive, the charge point's on the left side, and if it's right-hand drive, it's on the right side.
Makes sense. It doesn't always make sense sometimes on some of the cars, in my mind.
Yeah.
But I know there are reasons why charge ports are in different places. But I just wish, in some ways, it was possible for them to actually, in my mind, maybe I'm totally off on one here, but in my mind, everybody who's driven a petrol or diesel car are used to their putting the petrol in or diesel at the back on the left or right side. If you're watching me, I'm pointing in the wrong directions. But anyway, I just wish there was a way to kind of have a bit of consistency. But I do understand what happens. So what you're saying about your trucks, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, things like turbine, for example, it was super easy because we could just park in a long lane, and the charger was in the perfect position to connect to the truck. But with car charging, obviously, it is a challenge, especially in motorway service areas, because of course most of the charge, in fact, almost all of the chargers are in the car area. So we were having to drive into the car area in a 19-ton truck. So we were breaking the rules of the service area, the motorway service area. In order to reach the charges. In some cases, we had to go through the no entry area because we couldn't go around the normal way, because they have barriers across with a height restriction.
Yeah.
Couldn't get through that way, so we had to use the exit to go in where there was no height restriction. So yeah, we had to break a few rules to do it. And I think the good thing about that is it proves that electric trucks work, but it also proves that we need to change the way we operate. And we need motorway service areas particularly to kind of raise their game and say, hang on a minute, there are things other than cars that need to be charged. And we need to facilitate that because we shouldn't have trucks going the wrong way into a car park, could potentially be dangerous. We were very careful, of course.
Yeah.
In order to charge a vehicle of that size on a charger that wasn't placed, it's designed for that vehicle, but it's not placed in an area where it's conducive to, to charging that truck. So really, we need car chargers for cars and truck chargers for trucks in the same motorway service area, and that's the only way it's going to really work efficiently.
Yeah, because
that's
it's
one
not
truck.
it's not a one size fits all solution. All of this,
No,
is it?
it's really not, is it? No.
But I know that companies like GridServe are doing, kind of they've got their EHGV kind of charging network that they're starting.
Yeah.
But I know it's not something that can happen overnight.
Yeah, of course.
So when we're talking about your drivers parking, actually no, let's go back to because you were driving, weren't you, on the rally?
I was sharing the driving with 2 or 3 other people. Yeah, so Ed Miles and Richard Warner were the 3 drivers of the truck, and myself. Yeah, so it's 1,500 miles. So it's a long way to drive a solo person in a truck. So we were splitting the driving between us throughout the days. Yeah.
So how easy was it this year with you? Because obviously, like you said about splitting the driving. How easy was it for you? Was it similar? Did you have any of the same stuff? And actually, how long did you have to stay and charge in between? Because obviously, we're kind of, like I said to you before we started recording, it felt like we were cheating in a Tesla.
We were doing okay, actually. In fact, I have to say there was a marked improvement between this year and last year. It just felt easier this year. All the checkpoints were straightforward. We couldn't charge on all of them, and sometimes we had to go off piste and find charging elsewhere. But that's really not to do with the truck's powertrain. That was to do with the size of the truck. It just didn't fit in some of the locations where the checkpoints were. So we found it easier, I would say, to be honest. There were fewer problems this year than last year. I think, to be honest, last year one of the biggest problems was moving from the UK mainland to Ireland.
Right.
So obviously with the ferries and there was very little charging opportunity in Scotland before we got onto the Stranraer ferry over to Ireland, and that caused some problems with some of the trucks, needing to charge as soon as they got into Ireland, and we had a bit of a problem in Belfast, but we figured it out. We went to a local dealership and they were able to allow us to charge there instead. So yeah, there were ways around it, but I think as we've discussed already, there's a lot to do in order to make the network more truck friendly, at least anyway.
So how long did it take you to kind of charge the truck up once you got to, say like at Turbine, how, this in Leighton Buzzard, how long? And by the way, for those of you who are interested, so it's not called Turbine, is it? It's just that because it was an A to Z, this was T for Turbine.
Yeah.
So actually, if you look, if you look for AW Energy near Leighton Buzzard, you'll see, and there's like a Costa and various facilities there, isn't there?
Yeah,
but
great. It's really good.
It was. So how long did it take you to charge then?
So I think we only picked up about 40 minutes charging there. So it's a 282 kilowatt hour battery, or 264 usable, because obviously you have to take into account the battery. The intricacies of the battery, etc. Depth of discharge, etc. So we hadn't long charged anyway. I think we charged in Cambridge anyway, so we didn't have too much to worry about. But our truck, with that battery system on it, we can charge to 100% as much as we want without having to worry about the 80% rule. Because LFP batteries can take a kick in, to be honest with you. They don't tend to need preconditioning really, and that they are quite robust. So flat to full, it's around an hour and a half on that particular vehicle. So anywhere upwards of 5% to about 95%, about an hour and 20 minutes or so, depending on. But that would be, of course, at 150 kilowatts. That's the maximum the truck can charge at. We can charge it on 22 AC as well, so it is flexible in that we can use overnight AC charging. But of course, on a 282 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's going to take ballpark of 10 to 12 hours. So it's but that's where the trucks come into. Like, 50% of those vehicles, 50% of LF vehicles that we sell up to 19 tons do less than 100 miles a day in application. That's with diesel engines.
Right. Okay.
So traditionally, those trucks that we sell that are of the LF or now XB model, 50% of them do less than 100 miles a day, statistically. So they're perfect for electrification because they'll never really need a charge during the day, even if they're being used for secondary application like tail lift or bin lifts and things like that with electric motors to do that additional work. We have EPTOs on the truck anyway, so they can either use the 24-volt battery system, which is traditionally what a tail lift would operate on in a diesel truck, or if they need more power, there's an EPTO solution, so power takeoff of 25 kilowatt or 90 kilowatts, depending on application, to facilitate things like refrigerated systems on trucks for chilled deliveries, etc. So, we can even run sort of rear-mounted cranes for building merchants and things where they can deliver sort of sand or concrete blocks, etc. So they're very, very versatile.
Yeah, it sounds it. Goodness me. So what? Just going back to what I kind of asked you earlier. So what currently is the take up? Have you got any idea about what, kind of what size organisations are taking these trucks on currently?
It's very varied, actually. I mean, we've got about 40 vehicles on the road at the moment. 20 of them are from what we call the BET trial. I don't know if you may have heard of the BET trial, but that's where the EV rally truck is a sort of a veteran of the BET trial. And it came back to us because the end user couldn't facilitate that truck. They needed one with a shorter wheelbase. So we've helped them to find a solution for that. So we got that truck back and we've used it for the rally 2 years running, and it's never missed a beat, bless it. But just to put that into context of the wider fleet, those 20 trucks were part of the original, the precursor to ZHID, if you like, where we put 20 trucks in local authority care with NHS and councils, and they ran them over a year and a half, so 18-month period, and we gathered data from those trucks. And you can actually see that data. If you go to www.cenex.bet.co.uk, you can see that data in a full report, so you can see how many tons of CO2 we saved and NOx and so on and so forth. And it's really fascinating to see that data over an 18-month period with just 20 trucks on the road. If you were to times that by the amount of trucks, there's 500,000 trucks on the road at any given time, roughly speaking. So if you imagine that's 20 trucks and we saved, hundreds of tons of CO2 just with 20 trucks doing local deliveries. If you imagine the entire network was electric, it's incredible what we could do. We just need to facilitate it. But in terms of our fleet, we've got a mixed customer base. So we've got sort of, I can't really talk about who the customers are, but we've got smaller companies that want to be, So we've got smaller companies that want to be early adopters. So they want to prove to people in their own space that they're the ones that went first. So we've got a few companies that are running electric trucks. We've got one that we can talk about, which your husband had some involvement in, which is the Cisco Brakes LF, and that's running the climate stripes as part of its graphic package.
Okay.
And that runs out of Cisco Brakes in Reading, and it runs into London and back every day. And Reading University were partnered with Cisco Brakes in the evolution of that truck. So that I believe Reading University are taking data from it, telematic data from that truck on a day-to-day basis to form research material. If no one's familiar with the climate stripes, I don't know if you want to put that in the show notes or whatever, but it's fascinating. It really is.
And you can actually see the emissions per town. And I will put that in because that's really, really interesting. It's sort of like, so I think on there it talks about the local authority involvement, whether they've declared a climate emergency or not.
Yeah.
And and kind of what that council in that council area is doing about the climate emergency, isn't it? There are some. So just to say, for those of you listening and watching who don't know about this, by the way, there are some councils, from what I understand, who still haven't declared a climate emergency. Yeah. So those will be the ones that'll take a long time, and depends who you've got in power in there and all sorts of kind of additional factors. But going back to what you said about Reading University, so Professor Ed Hawkins is the chap who created the climate stripes. And like I say, per town or city, your climate stripes will look different on that website.
Yes, absolutely. And then if we look at the other end of the spectrum, we've got big players like I mean, again, I'm generically speaking, I can say things like Stobart and Maritime and, Wincanton and so on and so forth. They're all involved in the ZHID projects, and they will take a mixture of trucks from DAF, Scania, Mercedes-Benz, Renault, and any of the other players in those particular consortia. But yeah, so we are taking big orders at the moment from some of those larger customers that are traditional, customers of ours, that have bought diesels from us for decades. So they are now starting to build their own infrastructure, look at their depots, look at their destinations, look at their customer base, and see how charging can operate efficiently for them. And then, whilst that's going on in the background, they are looking at the order of the specifications of the trucks and what works best for them. Do they stick with what they know, or do they change the specification based on their traditional diesel trucks and so on and so forth? So we're finding that a lot of them are actually downsizing the cabs. So going from a traditional larger cab with a big sleeping area, which wasn't really being used anyway, down to more of a day cab, which is lighter, cheaper, and more efficient. So yes, it's interesting to see the evolution of fleet, as well as the smaller customers that just want to be early adopters.
No, that's really good. What would you like to see happen in the next few years then?
I would
With
really
trucks
like to
and
see. I would really like to see trucks become more of a focal point for legislation, as well as funding. Definitely, we currently have something called a plug-in truck grant, which when you can eventually access it, which means you need to sacrifice a kidney and pull in loads of red tape to go through. I've spent the last 2 years working with different authorities to try and get our trucks over the line with this, and I've finally got there. But it's an absolute nightmare. It shouldn't be that difficult. It really needs to be different. If we want customers to uptake electric vehicles, we need to make it easier for them. I think in the car space and the van space even, I think we're there now with that, but I think in the truck space we need to do more. So government incentives. At the moment, you can claim £25,000 against every chassis you buy as a customer, if the truck is eligible for that and it's on the government portal. And to get onto that portal, the manufacturer has to stand the cost of that. So we've spent thousands trying to get our trucks onto that portal, which we've done. We won't be able to claim any of that back as a manufacturer, but the end user, the customer, will be able to claim that £25,000 per truck back. And that's fine, because we do that to help our customers to adopt. But ultimately, it's not a workable solution. What I would like to see personally is, instead of giving £25,000 per truck, I'd rather see the government say, hey, here's £30,000 towards the installation of your depot charger. Because and the agreement then would be, as long as, where practically possible, you will allow other people to use it when you're not using it.
Yes.
That's the way we'll build an infrastructure and a network that will be just as good as the car network.
Yes.
And the other thing I would like to see is a change in driver regulations, because at the moment there are some challenges around tachograph regulations that really make it difficult for EV adoption, especially on longer routes as well. So, for example, we talked about the 4.5 hours driving before you have to take a legal break, 45 minutes. At the moment, so the way the tachograph works, if you're not familiar with it, you've got sort of three settings. You've got work, which is driving, you've got sleep or rest, and you've got other work, which is things like doing your daily checks, kicking the tyres, wiping the headlights, etc. You're not allowed to put the vehicle on charge and then take your rest. You have to list that as other work. So legally speaking, if I'm sleeping in the truck while it's on charge, I'm technically breaking the tachograph rules.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I have to charge it, then move it to a rest area, park it up, and then take my rest.
What?
I mean,
that's adding that time on to the end of...
Yeah,
oh, my God,
exactly.
That's ridiculous.
All we need is a very small change in legislation to allow charging to be classed as rest. See, the thing is, if it all stems from traditionally, whereas you can't put down that you're resting while you're filling a diesel tank, and that's absolutely correct. That comes under other work. So you have to switch your tachograph to other work, and it records it as such. I'm standing there filling a fuel tank, absolutely correct. But once I've plugged the charger in, which takes 3 minutes, 4 minutes,
if that,
I'm going to sit in the back and I'm going to be asleep, or at least resting while the vehicle charges itself.
Totally
that doesn't
different,
need
isn't
to be other work. That needs to be classed as rest. Yeah, so we do need some little tweaks to the driver regulations to make it more feasible for drivers and operators to use these trucks legally. Otherwise, there's going to be challenges down the road, I think, if that's not done.
I did not realise that that hadn't been changed. And I suppose
Yeah,
you get these regulations that have been around for many years, don't
yeah,
they? You know,
yeah,
haven't they?
exactly.
And actually, it's about kind of, okay, so we've got this rule, but we're now doing this.
Mhm.
So that doesn't apply. That rule shouldn't apply, because why would you stand next to, you wouldn't stand next to a charger
No,
when it's
exactly.
plugged
Yeah,
in, whereas you would stand next, you know, or be close to where you're filling it up with diesel.
yeah,
So
exactly. And there's one other change as well that we'd like to see. So at the moment, we're running a 42-ton truck, and there is an uplift. So in the 40-ton category, that's based on a 5-axle combination. So that's 3 axles on the trailer and 2 axles on the tractor unit, and we can run up to 40 tons with that combination. If we add another axle to the tractor unit, that means we can go up to 44 tons. That's the maximum gross vehicle weight. So at the moment, we get a 2-ton uplift to take it to 42 tons because of that's government legislation. So it's to mitigate the weight of the batteries, basically. But realistically, the trucks are easily capable of 44 tons on a 4x2 axle configuration. And we're being disadvantaged, really, because if people are buying 4x2 electric trucks, the batteries sit between the wheels. You know, and if
yeah,
we have the batteries anywhere else, it's going to cause some challenges in design. If we do run a 6x2 configuration, that means a very long tractor unit, very similar to what you see in the States, but that's not possible on UK roads and in European roads either. It's just not feasible. We need a good turning circle. So ideally, we've got axles, front axles on the trucks are capable of 9 tons, even 11 tons now, including NATO beam axles, which are wrong. So realistically, there's no reason why the government couldn't change the legislation so that we could run 44 tons on a 4x2. So we would be then at least able to take the same business as a company running diesel 6x2 tractor
yes,
units,
yeah,
because it's a disadvantage at the moment. So that's
yeah,
something to consider as well.
yeah. I suppose it's about evening the playing field up, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Kind of just making sure
Yeah.
that that's all evened up for sure.
Yeah, if the government is serious about EV adoption, then they need to help us out a little bit. That's
Okay.
my bottom line on
No, I
that one.
get you. I totally get you. Do you
Yeah.
know what I want to do? Because we kind of brushed over this very, 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 very quickly right at the beginning. I want to talk about you now.
Okay.
This is as long as you're all right. We have
Sure. Of
discussed this
course.
before. I've not
No.
just put Amy on the spot about this. We did discuss, and I don't want to not talk about it. So you talked about your transition as
Yeah.
a trans woman.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to kind of, you don't have to go into all the nuts and bolts and everything like
Oh,
that,
you
but
don't want to hear about that, especially on a family show.
yeah, well, there's that. But how have you? How has it been since the transition working in automotive? Have they been accepting? And obviously, I don't want you to kind of damn anybody, obviously,
No, of course
but
not. No.
you know, how's it? It's not an easy thing, is it? You
It's
know,
not. It's really not. My first experience, so I came out in 2015 and I didn't transition until 2016 because basically what happened was I gave Volkswagen a 6-month lead time to get used to what was going to happen. I worked with the HR directors to figure out what it looked like, because no one had transitioned at Volkswagen before, and I have to say they were fantastic. Absolutely hats off to them. They'd never experienced it. They didn't have any kind of background information. That they went to Stonewall, the LGBT charity, and they talked to them about policy. I mean, I wasn't very demanding. I said, look, I'll just do whatever is the easiest way to get this done. But it had to be done. I don't really want to go into the reasons why
no, no,
I
no, no,
felt
no.
that I had to transition, because it's not a nice thing to recall, really. But anyway, so it went really well in the end. But I remember the very first week I came into to Volkswagen Group as an Audi trainer, as Amy, as my what I call my true self, at least, the happy version of me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
The week before, we had a Friday meeting every week, a planning meeting for the week ahead as trainers. We would discuss what cars needed to be moved, what needed to be set up in the workshops, and so on and so forth. and any cover that needs to be looked at, and also what we were doing in terms of projects, like sort of project managing technical launches and things like that. So the previous week, as my old self, I had put forward an idea for a project launch, and they go, great idea, that's fantastic, clapping hands and writing stuff down, and it was fantastic. I went into the meeting a week later as Amy, presenting as a female, and similar sort of criteria, but we talked about a different launch, and I put forward an idea for that, and it was sort of, yeah, okay, that's great, good. And then 2 minutes later, one of my male colleagues said literally the exact same thing I just said, and everyone was like, oh, that's a great idea, and was clapping and writing things down.
Oh my
And I'd
God.
literally just said it, and in that moment, I knew that as a woman, I was going to have to work twice as hard for the same recognition in the motor trade.
I was going to say, I think a lot of women find that anyway.
Exactly. It's not a trans thing. That's a woman thing. Yeah. But, hopefully it will change at some point.
And you have...
It is changing.
And you've written a book, haven't you?
Yeah,
well,
that's the
everything.
result. Yes, it's a result of living on a farm in a shared house on a farm in Cosgrove, just outside of Milton Keynes during lockdown. Having access to a laptop, ADHD, and a lot of time on my hands. So I decided I was going to write my memoirs just for something to do because I was so bored. So I sat underneath this lovely willow tree with a babbling brook in front of me and with my laptop on my lap. And before I knew it, I'd written 5 chapters of a book. And I thought, well, I better carry on now then. So fast forward 18 months, a very good friend of mine, and actually my last boss at Volkswagen, a wonderful woman who I will name. Her name is Kate Hudson, not the famous actress, but she now works at Ford Academy, and she is an absolute tour de force. She's a wonderful woman and one of my closest friends. She edited the book for me, and we went through a series of proofreads with some sort of donor readers, if you like, and some of the people from DAF had a read of it to sort of sense check it for me. And when we got it to the point where we thought it was publishable, I did look for publishers, but unfortunately, being a niche kind of book in the trans space and talking about a subject that not everyone's comfortable talking about, I wasn't able to pull in a publishing deal, so I decided to self-publish on Amazon. So I now am basically a product of Jeff Bezos, unfortunately, but hey, it is what it is. It's an easy way to get your product out there, and for all of the challenges that working with Amazon can have, they are also, to be honest, very good at facilitating people like me to write something and put it out there for the masses, and hopefully a few people will buy it. So I think I've sold about 800 copies so far, so it's not too bad for the scribblings of an idiot, basically.
No, you're not at all. Do you know what, Amy? I've got to say, and actually, I think some of just people listening and watching should check her out, because I love you're very honest. You're so technically minded. It's fantastic. And actually, you are now comfortable in your own skin, whereas, and how many people can say that?
I mean, the former version of me had reached a glass ceiling where I just didn't have the drive and ambition to do anything else. I was a technical trainer, and I thought, well, that'll do. Since I've transitioned, I've got my truck license. I'm doing a business degree at university. I've got a much better job. My circumstances are just better all round, and I'm happy at the end of the day. So I get some stick on social media for the way my voice sounds, or the fact that I wasn't born a female, etc. But none of that really matters, because at the end of the day, I'm just a person. Whether you assign a gender to that person or not doesn't really matter. You have to be comfortable in your own skin, and when you're comfortable with who you are, that's when you achieve your best results. And I've done more in the last sort of 8 years as me than I did in the 42 years prior to that. So that should really be all that matters, but for some people it's not. I always say, if only closed minds came with closed mouths, we'd all be happy.
Well, absolutely, totally get you. And you know what? I'm so pleased that the last 8 years has been what you've wanted, because
absolutely.
why does everybody wants to be happy? Yeah. And that's the main thing. I tell you what I'm going to do is, so in the show notes, I will make sure that I add in a link to your book on Amazon.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
But I'm gonna end there because I think, and I know you've got stuff to do as well. I think that is a very poignant point to finish on. So I want to thank you for being honest, for being brilliant, and you are just brilliant. And keep doing.
You.
Oh, stop it! I'm good at saying to everybody, but I'm not very good at taking it. But look, I look forward to hugging you. Hopefully next week when we're both going to a thing together. Hopefully, depending on my son going to university and I'm not in tears or something, or crying in a cupboard. But listen, Amy, thank you. I really appreciate your time. You've just been brilliant, a brilliant guest.
Thank you too, and thank you for the opportunity to come on this amazing podcast, which I'm now catching up with all the back episodes. I'm absolutely loving it. So get out and get it shared. So get listening.
Do you know what? And so thank you for that prompt. If you have enjoyed this, and I hope you have, whether you've watched or whether you've listened, please share it, because actually all of this stuff needs to be shared with more people. More people need to find out about electrification, about the fact that, kind of about air pollution, about electrification of trucks and all of this kind of stuff. And actually this is only a small independent podcast. The only way we can reach that audience is by the people who are watching and listening, actually sharing. So please do, if you can do that, and share Amy's story as well. And all the wonderful stuff that she's told us. So on that note, I'm going to say thanks again, Amy. It's been brilliant.
Thank
you. To everybody else, thank you for listening and watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Electric Evolution. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected with us. And if you're inspired by our journey towards a sustainable future and want to support our mission on a monthly basis, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Your support really helps us to bring the latest insights and discussions in the world of clean energy, electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging and sustainability to you. If a regular subscription isn't what you're looking for, you can always consider buying us a coffee. Just head over to www.buymeacoffee.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Every cup helps us to keep the electric evolution moving forwards. And if you're curious about our work in the EV infrastructure sector at Full Circle Continuous Improvement, why not visit us at www.fullcircleci.co.uk to find out more. And if you want to send me a message, you can always email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. And finally, please don't forget to share this podcast if it's sparked your interest. And let's keep spreading the word about all of these topics that we're covering. So, until next time, see you soon. Bye!